Buenos días, estudiantes. Bienvenido a la sesión 1 del capítulo 7, Geografía de México. Excuse me, I got a little carried away there. What I should have said was, good afternoon, students. Welcome to Chapter 7, Section 1, Mexico Geography. At this time, pause the video and write down the vocab words you see here. Resume the video when you are finished. Okay, let's start by looking at our Earth. Of course, here's North America. And for reference, the United States. And Mexico is the country that borders us to the south. And that's what we're going to be looking at for this week. Now, Mexico itself is essentially one big peninsula. Which, what you wrote down earlier, a peninsula is land that is surrounded by water on 3 of its sides. So the main part of Mexico is connected to the United States up here, so there's no water to the north. However, there's water along its western, southern, and eastern coasts. Those bodies of water are the Gulf of Mexico, which takes up this region here, the Gulf of California, which takes up this small area, and then the rest of the Pacific Ocean. One of the notable features of Mexico is the Rio Grande River. Now, the Rio Grande runs along this area right here and creates the border between Texas and Mexico. Most of Mexico is made up of a plateau called the Mexican Plateau. 2 mountain ranges form this plateau. Looking at the map here, you can tell everything that's kind of the brownish color, that's where the mountainous areas are. Everything that's more green is closer to sea level. So the 2 mountain ranges that make up the plateau include the Sierra Madre Oriental, which runs to the east, and the Sierra Madre Occidental, which runs to the west. And the plateau takes up this central region. At the very end of the plateau lies the Valley of Mexico, which is where you'll find the capital city of Mexico City. Kind of easy to remember, huh? If we take a look at Mexico City, you'll find that it is a huge metropolitan area. Mexico City can pretty much be described in 3 different regions, which we'll take a look at right now. First of all, Mexico City has a huge modern area. Modern meaning that it's actually up to date. As you can see here, lots of skyscrapers cover a lot of Mexico City. And it's very comparable to cities in the US such as New York City, Chicago, Seattle. The next area would be more of a traditional Mexico City. Now looking here, you can see this architecture on this church, and it is very old, probably dating back to the maybe even 1800s. There are lots of buildings throughout Mexico City that has this old school architecture. Now the last region is probably not the most, it's not the nicest one to look at, in other words. These areas are called the slums. These areas are where a lot of people in Mexico City live in extreme poverty, meaning that they are very poor. These slums are all grouped together, usually up on hills, and the conditions here are not great. A lot of the times these places don't have electricity, air conditioning. Usually diseases run through here since everyone's, pretty much crammed in there together. And overall in Mexico, 46% of all Mexicans live in poverty. So it's a pretty high number. Earlier I mentioned that Mexico is very mountainous. Its highest mountain is called Mount Orizaba. Or, in Mexico, they say it Pico de Orizaba. Go ahead and write this detail down in your comp book, and pause the video, and then I'm going to show you where it's located on the map in just a moment. Now on the map, let's take a look at where Mount Orizaba is actually located. To the southeast of Mexico City, there's where you'll find the highest peak in Mexico, Mount Orizaba, or Pico de Orizaba in Spanish. Now, Mount Orizaba is the 3rd largest mountain in all of North America. It tops over 18,700 feet, which is pretty tall. Okay, now let's take a look at a special feature called the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, the Yucatan Peninsula is this little Almost looks like a shrimp tail almost on Mexico. And if we zoom in, you can see it's mostly forested area, judging by the green color. Now the Yucatan Peninsula overall is mostly flat. There's not a lot of elevation changes here. Underneath the surface, you have limestone. Now limestone is a very brittle substance, and through many years of erosion, it creates sinkholes deep beneath the surface. Now sinkholes happen when all the erosion, or all the limestone erodes, and it causes the soil on top to become very thin. And if enough weight's applied to it, it can fall in and create a massive sinkhole. Be prepared in class later on for me to show you what a sinkhole looks like via a terrible drawing on the board. Trust me, it's terrible. Now the climate of the Yucatan Peninsula is usually hot and dry. The further south you go to Mexico, you will get much more rainfall, particularly on the Pacific coast. There are many tropical rainforests, and it makes up about 20% of Mexico's land area. In these tropical forests, you will find jaguars, monkeys, parrots, and thousands of different species of animals. Now overall, Mexico has 5 different climate types, and they are desert, steppe, that's not steppy or steppe or steep, it's pronounced steppe, I promise. Look it up in a dictionary. Tropical savanna, humid subtropical, and highland. Now the desert climates you're going to find just south of Texas. Many different deserts come together to create a large dry area. The steppe climate's going to be a little bit further south of that. The tropical savanna will be towards the eastern coast, with humid subtropical on the west coast, and the highland climate is pretty much going to take up the Mexican Plateau region. Pause the video so you can finish writing down these climate types. Now for Mexico's natural resources, their most important energy resource is petroleum, which is created from oil, and oil lies mostly underneath southern Mexico and offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. Mining is also very important. Gold and silver mines that began centuries ago are still operating today. Not only do they produce gold and silver, but they also produce copper, lead, and zinc. Alright, that's all for Section 1 of Chapter 8 over Mexico Geography. We'll discuss more in class after you finish with the notes.